I've been talking to myself again. But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on the thought.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to NUFC Matters, the Fans Forum, or I think from the discussions before we went live, I think it's going to be the 5-minute rant. I've got to be honest with you. But welcome, everyone. Welcome those in the chat already. I'm sure it's going to be a fantastic show. And of course, no Chris H tonight. He's living the life down in London still in the pub somewhere, probably drowning his sorrows. But we have Holly Blades coming to join us to discuss all things Newcastle. How you doing, Holly?
I'm okay, Pete. How are you?
Now I know that's not true. From the discussions we've had before, I know that's not true. So look, I'm just gonna get okay. We're both not happy here, but I think there's things that we need to say. So Holly, it was a dreadful performance yesterday at Tottenham. I think it's your first time at the new stadium, certainly mine.
My second.
Your second. So from my perspective, it was great to see the stadium, great to see the boys again after the international break. But the performance, particularly in the second half, was not good. Now, from your perspective and your analysis of that whole situation, how are you feeling right now?
Well, I think the first kind of 15 minutes of the game, you could already tell that Spurs were by far the better side, and I wasn't expecting us to go on and get anything from the game. Did I expect us to get beat 5-1? No, of course not, but I wasn't thinking we could get anything from that game. Obviously, we scored that goal, which we were lucky to get, in my opinion, because I think Spurs had the better chances overall, but of course, you'll take it. And as soon as we did score that goal, straight again, the nerves just set in for me. I was like, oh, this doesn't look good. And pretty much minutes after, Spurs equalised. Wasn't, what you wanted to see. Really killed off the momentum because everyone was so happy. And then, of course, that let everyone down. First half finished 1-1 going into the second half, and we just felt a bit, to be honest. Obviously, they got an early second goal in the game. And I think from that point, I knew personally, I turned to a few people and said they're going to go on to probably score 3, 4, 5 at that point. And I think you could just tell the mentality, the heads dropped. So, and that happened. We conceded another 3. Wasn't really the best way to concede it. I really just think their heads just went and they just were like happy to sit back and take the defeat. That's what it felt like. And then obviously at that point when we were 4-1 down, making the substitution, and I know we spoke about this off air, bringing off obviously Chris Wood, who's a striker, for Jamal Lascelles, who's a defender, for me just felt really, really pointless. I get you've got to protect Chris Wood because at the moment he's our main striker, obviously with the injury to Callum Wilson, but why not bring Dwight Gale on? Do people forget that he exists? When you're 4-1 down, goal difference and all the rest of it doesn't really matter for me. I think I would rather have seen us go on to get beat 6-7-1 and actually have a goal, because you brought on defender and then we conceded the 5th. So what difference did it make? Absolutely none. Ridiculous decision for me. And I don't know about anyone else. I mean, I put that on Twitter yesterday in the heat of the moment. And I know that sometimes causes problems, which it did yet again. And I wasn't the only one saying it. I think I got the worst response, which didn't surprise us, to be honest. But look, for me, it was just a very negative substitution to make. And I think that's one thing that's happened since the takeover. You're not allowed to complain about anything. And I really don't understand that, because yes, we are very, very lucky. We're in a good position. I think we're doing well in the league, and I'm not anti-Howe or anything like that. But sometimes you don't agree with substitutions or whatever. And I think you should be allowed to say that, because ultimately I put like 564 miles in or something yesterday, pay your money to watch the game. You should be entitled to say what you want about the game, for me.
I'm glad you certainly got that rant out early doors. Look, we had a conversation about the substitutions before we went on air, and I'll talk about it in a second. But certainly from my perspective, I I actually was quite pleased with the first half. The percentages of possession and all the rest of it, I'm not interested in, because you go into White Hart Lane or Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, whatever you want to call it. You're never going to dominate possession unless you're unless you're a Man City, Liverpool, a top team like that. So I wasn't necessarily worried about that. What I was happy about is we had that low sitting defensive line. And for all their possession, they couldn't seem to break us down, and they were getting really frustrated in that first half. So I was quite content with how we were playing. Hitting them on the counter, giving the ball to Maxi. Maxi was causing all the problems we gave them was down our left hand side. And we were playing a lot down that side. Emerson Royale was not good. Romero was outstanding, in my opinion. I thought he was very, very good down there. But Maxi was given as good as he got at times in that first half. We obviously scored a fantastic free kick from Fabian Shaw. And I'm looking at the clock and I'm seeing 40 odd minutes on the clock. I'm thinking, please, said to the boys around me, let's get to half time. We get to half time, we get in there. How we get into them, I think, we've got a good chance here, because they're going to be under pressure. They're chasing top four. They're going to be under pressure. The disappointing thing is that it is the fact that we conceded straight away. We conceded straight the way afterwards. And it's a poor goal. And it's a lack of effort from some of the boys out there to press the ball as quickly as possible. Poor organisation. It just wasn't good at all. And alarm bells started to ring. But it's 1-1 at half time. You're thinking Eddie Howe can get into them. We can come out and really come out playing well in the second half. The opposite happened. We conceded a cheap goal second half. And then the game's done. And you could tell the game's done, because you look at the body language of the players. The heads are down, and it was kind of like they've gone into old mode. Some of the existing players, it was almost like they've gone into defeatist mode, and they knew the game was done. And then the players were all over the place. And we could talk about individual players, but collectively it wasn't good enough. The defense was really, really poor. I thought Dubravka was really, really poor as well in that second half. And it just turned into an absolute shambles. And I'm really disappointed with what I saw, with some of the attitudes and some of the quality that I saw in that second half. I don't really want to go into individual players, but I'm sure when we get the guest on, that we might touch on certain players. But there were certain players that I'm a little bit worried about after that game yesterday. However, we talked about the sub, and you obviously I've got your opinions on that, Holly. You're adamant, and I can see it from both ends of the perspective. So. Of course, we've travelled all that way. You guys travelled a lot further than I did, but still, we travel. We pay for our ticket. We're in the stadium, and we want to see a team that's trying to score goals and potentially win the game. So to take your only striker off and not bring a striker on, but bring a non-striker on and put Alison Maximin up top on his own, is basically waving the white flag for me.
Yeah,
I can see why he's doing it. Because he almost set up the formation to match Tottenham, to basically stop them playing and stop them scoring any more goals. So I can see why he did that. But from a fan perspective, and this is where you're talking from, Holly, from a fan perspective, in the away end, watching that, having travelled the distance you did, I can understand why you're frustrated with that. In that, and to be fair, there's I don't know if I've still got it. There was someone in the chat that mentioned it, actually, mentioned the fact that about Dwight Gale, and said, why is Dwight Gale not given an opportunity? There is clearly something going on with Dwight Gale. There has to be. You cannot talk up a player like you had Dwight Gale in the press conference at the weekend on Friday, the way he did, and said he's going to play his part and that he needs to be patient. There's been lots of talk from the media that he's been playing well in training and scoring goals and looking really, really sharp, and that he looks like he wants it, but yet he's still not getting minutes. Something's not right. Something is not right there. whether it's a clause in his contract that if you play so many or appear so many times that something gets extended, or there's an increase in his wage. I don't know what it is, but something's not right for him not to be playing, even in a game where it's 4-1, to even just give him some minutes, some fitness for if we do need him. Because let's face it, with the disappointing news about Callum Wilson having a setback, if something happens to Chris Wood, which is also probably in Eddie Howe's thinking, something happens to Chris Wood, we've only got Dwight Gale. And if he's not willing to play him now, is he going to be willing to play him if Chris Wood gets injured? And that's a big concern for me. So there's something not right there, in my opinion, which is why Dwight Gale. And I know lots of fans have been talking about and banging the drum about Dwight Gale. He needs to be playing, he needs to be playing, he needs to be given a chance. This is 2 managers now. In fact, you could probably add Benitez to that. There's 3 managers now that have not or have gone out of their way to not play Dwight Gale when he could be playing football for Newcastle United. There's something that we don't know about. There's something that's in-house that we don't know about, that's gone from one manager to the next, that's ensuring that he does not play football. So it's a really, really tough situation, that. And, you know, the sub, although not great, I would understand a little bit more if we maybe found out a little bit more about Dwight Gale's situation. But I don't think we will. I think, you know, this new ownership are very good in keeping things in-house. If they want things to get out, it will get out. If they don't, it won't. So that's my little 2 pence on the sub situation. But I get it. At that point, I'll be honest with you, it didn't really matter to me. The game was done. As soon as it went 3-1, the game was done. There was no way we were getting 2 goals to get back into that game. And I think the players knew it. I think the fans knew it. And I don't know about you, Holly, but the one thing that surprised me, regardless of the result, the scoreline, is how many fans left before the end of the game. So by 80 minutes, the vast majority of the away section was empty. And that surprised me a lot. Now, I've been to games where we've had some drubbings. Me and Chris were at the game yesterday, and we even talked about. I mentioned to him. I said, look around, look at how empty it is in the away end. I said we were at Leicester where we got smashed 4-0, and that was just as bad that day. We still had a full allocation, singing, chanting, supporting the boys. That was not good. And I tell you what, before we get our guests on, we need a reaction Friday. We need a massive, massive reaction from the manager, from the players. We need a performance in front of St. James's Park faithful on Friday night under the lights. We need a reaction because that was not good enough.
I 100% agree. I think we'll come to that as well on Friday's game, because I know people probably have a mixed opinion on that. But just going off what you were saying about the away end being empty, there's a couple of things I'll say on that. The first thing, there wasn't very many trains back to Newcastle, and I know a lot of fans were booked on the 7 o'clock train. Obviously, the match didn't finish till 6:30, so we had to leave a little bit earlier, regardless of the result. But I think another thing why people left was because you could just see that we don't mind getting beat 5-1 if they were really trying and giving it their all, and Spurs were just class. But that wasn't the case because they really just didn't put any effort in.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair point. And I didn't know about the last train back. Obviously, I was driving myself, but that definitely explains some of it. And like you say, being 3-4, 5-1 for so long in the game, do I blame any Newcastle fan for leaving a little bit earlier to get that train? Not at all. Not at all. It was not good. But anyway, let's move on. We've got a couple of guests waiting that have clearly got things that they want to say about weekend's game. So let's get the first one in. Welcome in, Tony. How you doing, Tony?
Hi, Pete. All right.
Very good,
Hi, Tony.
Well, apart from yesterday, obviously, 2 words for that. Utter shite. Excuse the language, Charlie, but that's what it was. First half, yeah, it was okay. The first half, I mean, we got the goal. We went ahead. Disappointed that we conceded a couple of minutes before half time. So I was sort of thinking, let's see this till half time and then see what we can do in the second half. Yeah. We come out in the second half and we just totally collapsed. Yeah, Matt Doherty just sort of like ghosted in at the back and scored, as he usually does score against us anyways. He's done it for Wolves in the past. So he got his customary goal against us. But after that, we just seemed to just fall apart. I mean, the amount of space Son had to score, he only had to pick where he wanted to put it, really. And Bergwijn, when he came on, I thought he's going to score against us, and I could see it happening. And then what happened? He scored. And then he almost added a sixth as well. Thankfully, it went over the bar. But really disappointed with that performance yesterday. It's got to be ranked up there, one of the worst of the season, I think, because, I know Leicester was bad, but that's got to be worse than Leicester, surely. I mean, we just capitulated in that second half, totally. And all I just thought after that, I mean, I watched it right till the end, but I just thought, me thought was, right, let's get to Friday now. Let's just write this off now. We've lost it now, so let's get to Friday. And, Ginola wasn't happy, and I can agree with what he said, I know at one point he said, scrap the team. But he was meaning as like they need a bit of a clear out in the summer, which he's right, yeah. We can all say that. We all know we need a clear out. But when he brought off, I mean, you're about Chris Wood, I can see, I was thinking myself, hang on, why is Wood coming off, but Lascelles is coming on, where's Gale? And if I was to wait Gale sitting on that bench and I'm seeing Lascelles coming on for Wood, thinking, well, hang on, why aren't I going on there? Why aren't I getting some game time? Why are you bringing the defender on and not a striker? So, I can see that argument. So there is something with Gale. There must be something going on that, as you say, he doesn't play. Is it because he can't make too many appearances in case it triggers something in his contract or what? Just don't know. It's just a strange one. It's like we got a player sitting there doing nothing who maybe last summer we probably should have just sold and moved on to somewhere else, and he could have been playing the Championship for somebody and getting regular game time because he's not getting it now. Don't know what your thoughts on that are.
No, I think you made some good points. Holly, from obviously Tony's perspective, he's talked a little bit about David Ginola and his thoughts. I don't know if you managed to see his sort of interview after the game and the comments that he made. Did you manage to see that at all?
Haven't caught up with Ginola's comment, no.
No. Well, it was really, really interesting. Certainly the key thing and the big talking point is that he's talked about Newcastle, if they want to be challenging at the high end of the table, you need to sort of scrap the team. I think it's Dave Jones, the presenter, kind of laughs it off, and he seems very, very, very genuine about it, in order to move forward, because he's saying, from that performance yesterday, there are players in that team that are just not good enough. But from your perspective, Tony,
yeah,
if we were to scrap the team or certainly scrap some players, who in your mind, might be clouded slightly after Sunday's performance, but who in your mind does need to come out or need to move on?
Oh, well, where do we start? I mean, we all know, we've all seen the reports Almiron's going in the summer. And I remember saying to you previously, Pete, I think Spain would suit Almiron more for his game anyway, or maybe Portugal. So moving Almiron on, definitely. I think Kraft will go in the summer. If we want to go to where we want to go, we've got to get rid of some of these players. But the thing is, though, you don't want to ship too many out because you want to make sure you can get the players in first before you ship out. You don't want to say, right, let's ship 10 players out, but we can't get 10 in. So you want to make sure first that you can get the players in for them positions where you want to ship those players out. So, like, say, for instance, if we're going to sign Target on a full-time contract, then we need to get, if he doesn't like Lewis and he wants to move Lewis out the club, then he needs to get another left back who is equally as good as Target. So then there's competition for the left back. Trippier, we know he's a class act. We need a right back to cover Trippier. So when Trippier's out, I know we've got Manquillo, but you need somebody a little bit better than Manquillo who can come in and do a job when Trippier's injured or see suspended or whatever. The same with the centre-halves. We need new centre-halves in. I know we've got Dan Burn, but we need competition. So like get Sven Botman in because he's got to be a must in the summer.
Tony, that's a really good talking point because I want to get both of your thoughts on this because obviously there's been in recent weeks a lot of talk, when we're not just regarding Sven Botman, but just regarding a centre back coming in the summer. And there's been a number of Newcastle fans, just in general, social media, the rest of it, saying from their perspective, that we don't need another centre back because we've got Shaw that's playing well, we've got Dan Burn that's playing well. Were you both yourself, Tony and Holly? Were you both of that mindset, or do you think we need another centre back? Because I do, and I think Sunday proved that.
Tony, do you want to start?
We definitely do need more another centre back. I mean, it's proven we do need them really, and you do need that extra bit of quality. Especially the amount of games you're going to play a season when you play 38 Premier League games a season, and then you've got cup games on top of that as well. So you do need strength and depth. So at the end of the day, yeah, we do definitely need to get at least one centre back, and if not two quality ones as well.
Yeah, Holly, what do you think?
That'll give them the push, and then the centre backs that are say if Shaw and Burn are the starting partnership, but they know behind them that if they don't play well, they've got two centre halves sitting behind them waiting just to take their space. So that's what you need. You need that competition.
Holly, what do you think from a defensive point of view?
In my mind, I don't think the current set of centre-backs has ever been good enough. Obviously, you've got Dan Burn, who's been fantastic. I don't think he's probably had one bad game. I think Spurs arguably was his worst performance, but I still think he was better than the other defenders on that day. And Fabian Shaw, he's been a revelation, turning his season around as well. But apart from that, there's no one really there. And I think not just in defence, but across the pitch, there's not a lot of competition for places, and you need that if you want to start challenging in the league. But also, if one of those players are out or he wants to play a 5 at the back rather than a 4 at the back, there isn't anyone good enough to come in my mind. So I think we certainly need to sign at least 2 defenders, to be honest.
I agree with you 100%, Ollie. I think we need 2 new centre backs, and I think not necessarily based on yesterday, but I think we have to remember this is what Eddie Howe's doing. Eddie Howe is using this period of time now. And he has been even in our great run, and he'll use it right to the end of the season to assess where he needs to strengthen in the summer. So he's using this as his opportunity to suss out the team, look at the players' characters, look at the players that really want it, look at the players that maybe are just not quite good enough for where he wants to take this team. And I think 2 new centre backs will be needed in the summer. For all of good Dan Burn's performances, Dan Burn has been fantastic. Absolutely fantastic, but I am genuinely, and I spoke to a lad on the way out of the ground on Sunday, and I said I am genuinely worried about Dan Burn after not just yesterday, but the last 2 games before, because I looked at Dan Burn and I saw the same when I was at Goodison Park with Dan Burn. That misjudgment for Havertz's goal at Chelsea seems to have knocked him a little bit, because he was a man mountain before that game at Chelsea. And to be fair, even against Chelsea, he was a man mountain. It was a fantastic performance again, apart from that last minute, and you could see the disappointment and the distress on him through his body when he gave Havertz that opportunity to score. And I think that's knocked him. Then the fact that he's got sold out of position, lost the ball to Iwobi, and then they've gone and scored against Everton. I think that's a hammer blow. And I saw that was probably Dan Burn's worst performance in a Newcastle shirt. And I don't mean the second half when the game was done and gone. I mean in the first half. He didn't look the same player. He didn't have or play with the same level of confidence that he did when he first came into the team. And I worry about that. I do. I worry that, was it a case that he's riding the wave of we're unbeaten in 9? And every player does. You go back years with all different clubs. Players ride the wave. But then when that wave stops, are they able to continue that level of performance? And I just worry about his confidence levels at the moment, because let's face it, he is the best centre-back at the club right now. But if he's not playing well, I believe that has a knock-on effect to Fabian Schär, who equally wasn't very good yesterday either. And then we've got the likes of Fernandes that can't get a game. He'll be gone in the summer, no doubt. Jamal Lascelles, nobody really trusts him. And then you've got Kieran Clark, who nobody wants in the team, and he isn't even in the 25-man squad. So we need Dan Burn to be playing well in order for our team to play well. And that's why I'm worried, is because he looks like his confidence has been taken out a massive, massive blow. So I think we need that quality of centre-back to come in to be able to support not only Dan Burn, but any others in and around Fabian Schär. I actually think Jamal Lascelles will probably get another season, although a lot of people won't agree with that. I think Eddie Howe will probably give him one more season to prove himself, but all the rest of them will go. But that's just my opinion from that perspective. But Tony, anything more before you leave us?
Obviously, we've got Wolves on Friday. Now, for that game, I would bring Bruno back in to start. So I would maybe see a drop either. Well, I don't know if you want to play him alongside Shelvey, then you would have to say one of Willock or Joe Linton has to miss out for that game. But considering they've got no Ruben Neves, who's injured, they've got no Raul Jimenez, who's out suspended. And this is our chance to pick up 3 points, or even I'll be happy taking a point off Wolves, to be honest with you, because they're not a bad team at all. So I would be happy with a point. I mean, we've got three home games coming up. We've got Wolves on Friday, then we got Leicester Easter Sunday, which I'll be up for, and then we've got Crystal Palace on the Wednesday, and then we've got Norwich away. So out of them 4 games, hopefully we should have guaranteed our safety out of them 4 games, because really we should go to Norwich and beat them. I mean, I watched Brighton play Norwich on Saturday. I managed to catch on the stream. And the amount of chances Brighton had, they should have buried Norwich. But they just couldn't score. Because Norwich looked absolutely awful. Yeah. They were putting everybody behind the ball. But so hopefully we can go down to Carrow Road and actually beat them down there and pick up 3 points there. I would say we need probably at least 4 points to guarantee safety, I think. So I think once we get to 35, I think you should sort of be all right. Burnley at home to Everton on Wednesday. Now, my head says I want Burnley to win because I want to see the Scouse Smackums go down. But on the other hand, it's like, do we want Everton to win to keep Burnley down there? Because then that means Burnley will be still further away from us, considering we've got Burnley last game of the season. It's a hard one. And I know it's on Sky Sports Live as well on Wednesday. So, but I don't know. I think I would rather have Burnley beating Everton, if I'm honest. I don't know about you guys.
Holly, I forgot about that. It's a massive game midweek. Burnley, Everton. What are you going for? What would you prefer?
I mean, don't get us wrong, I'd absolutely love to see Everton go down. I think they'll just manage to scrape by and stay up, but I'd probably go for Everton beating Burnley just because it distances that gap. And I hope it doesn't come down to that last game of the season, and I don't think it will, but it'll be a lot more comfortable if they have a defeat on Wednesday.
Yeah, I know that. 100%. It's about staying in the league.
Yeah.
We can argue about we should be fighting for top 10 or wherever we finish. We can argue that, but if we're 17th and above, I don't think any Newcastle fan will care, to be honest. It's a season that, if anyone's really honest with themselves, it's a season that we just want done. We just want done with this season. We know we're still playing Premier League football, and then we're in a position where we can go, right, let's really improve this squad and get this squad ready to go and actually give Eddie Howe and the players a full season with his proper pre-season build-up and preparations to get us up and running. And I think you'll see a different Newcastle United. I'm absolutely sure of it. A nice Everton win would for me be ideal, because that's another game chalked off, another game in hand, should we say, chalked off for Burnley. So it'll be another defeat for Burnley, and then it pulls us even closer. And as you've talked about, Tony, is what it means is that points for safety, or how many points we need for safety, just starts to narrow slightly in our favour.
Yeah,
which is good. And like you've already talked about as well, sort of the next 4 games are going to be crucial in our season. And if we can get 4 or 5 points, 6 points for me guarantees it.
Because after that we've got likes of Man City, Liverpool, Arsenal to come. So really, these next 4 games are the games we need to be targeting and getting points out of. Who's to say we don't beat Leicester?
Well, I hope so.
They're not playing brilliant at the minute, are they? I mean,
I'll be honest with you, Tony.
Although Saturday they were unlucky.
They should have beat Man United at Old Trafford, and I have to say, they have been playing much better. And the one thing that I didn't want to happen, but I always knew it would, because it always happens when a team comes to play Newcastle, is that arguably their best player becomes fit again. And Wesley Fofana, if anyone watched him on Saturday, bearing in mind he hadn't played all season, that was his first Premier League game of the season after an ankle/leg break in pre-season. On top of that, he'd just started Ramadan, so in terms of eating and drinking, he hadn't had anything to eat, hadn't had anything to drink, and he then went out and played the way he did at Old Trafford. He was outstanding. He's just an outstanding centre-back, and that worries me going into the Leicester game at St James's Park, because you don't want their best players playing well in the build-up to that game. But look, we'll see about that. But Tony, massive thanks for you coming on to the show. Always appreciate your points. Always make some fantastic points, some great talking points. And of course, hopefully, we'll be back next Monday to talk about a Newcastle win and talk about our plans for next season, because hopefully we'll be on 34 points and everything will look rosy again. And Spurs on Sunday will be a distant memory.
Just one quick thing. Brentford got done the best of the weekend, didn't they? 4-1 over Chelsea. What a result that was, wasn't it? And I'll tell you what, Eriksen, he's playing well. He's only on a 6-month deal. I would have him at Newcastle.
It was definitely the Christian Eriksen show, that's for sure. He's showing his absolute quality. And Brentford are very lucky to have him. So
they are very lucky. Yeah.
But, Tony, you take care.
We'll speak to you next week. See you later. Bye.
Great to have Tony on. Always makes some good points, and he's right. Christian Eriksen, Holly, would you take him? Contract runs out in the summer.
That's a really hard one, because before he signed for Brentford, I'd probably say maybe not. But then obviously he's done quite well at Brentford. I don't know, maybe on a short-term deal, but not anything kind of more than a year, I don't think.
Okay, I'd definitely have him 100%. 2-3 year deal. He has rejuvenated Brentford. Well, I think not that we got lucky, because we deserved to win that game away at Brentford, and we were very, very good that day, albeit against 10 men. But we got Christian Eriksen at his early stages at Brentford. He'd only just come back. I think it was his first game, in fact, for Brentford. So he was just kind of finding his feet. Now he's found his feet. You look at the way he's playing. He is back playing the way he played at Tottenham and the way he played at Inter Milan. And that sort of player for me is the exact type of creativity, control and calmness on the ball that we need if we're going to be sort of a possession side. You look at what Aston Villa have done, for example, with Coutinho and Buendia. They brought those kind of possession-dominated players on the ball into the team, and they are performing better because of it. Christian Eriksen does that. for sure. But you know, with the medical reasons, it's always going to be always going to be a difficult one. That's for sure. Just before we get our next guest in, so we've got Dino that said our best player, hands down, was on the bench. I'm assuming you're talking about Bruno Guimaraes. Would you agree with that, Holly?
I don't know about best player in the whole squad, but that's currently fit. He's definitely up there. Although I think it's a bit harsh on Joe Linton because I think he is really, really good. Just a different type of player.
Different type of player, yes. But from my perspective, when he came on, even in that whole of that midfield, even when he came on and we were losing heavily, he just looks a class above. Tottenham were trying to kick him. They were trying to pull him down. They tried everything to try and get the ball off him. He's just very difficult to get the ball off him. He's just so calm and composed. He is a very different type of player to Joe Linton. You're absolutely right. I think personally, and I want to get your thoughts on this, Holly, I think there's a decision to be made on John Joe Shelvey or Bruno, because I don't think both can play in the team. I think either Bruno plays in that sitting role and dictates the play, or Shelvey. What do you think about
that? I feel like it's going to be harsh on Shelvey if you dropped him, especially this season, because I think he has done well. He does make a difference in game. He's the best passer of the ball by a mile, and he has been for years at Newcastle. Obviously, we've constantly seen ups and downs in his performance. In his performances week to week at Newcastle. 1 week he can be the star player, the next he's very, very poor. But I think he's been pretty consistent since Eddie Howe arrived. So would I completely just drop him out of the squad for Bruno at this moment? Probably not. But I think next season he will definitely take over from John Joe Shelvey, and I think that's the right time. And I think he'll find it a lot easier to play as well when he knows that we're not in a relegation battle, because his style of play, he likes to take risks and things, and I think when you're in a relegation battle, that is a lot more difficult to do for him. And the only reason why I said that I wouldn't say potentially he's the best player in the squad is because I don't think we've seen enough of him yet. I think when he has played, he's been very exciting to watch, but he hasn't done enough for me yet to obviously prove that he's a good player because he hasn't had enough game time.
Yeah, he definitely needs more game time, and that's why I think ultimately Eddie Howe's got a decision to make. We've got 8-7 games left in the season. I think what he needs to do now is decide, right, do I keep mixing and matching Shelvey and Bruno Guimaraes? Is Bruno going to start getting frustrated because he's clearly good enough to be playing, and he's a talented boy and should be playing in that midfield. And like you said, Holly, he's likely to be starting next season, but is he going to be one to wait? Is he going to want games under his belt to be fit and ready and feel comfortable in English football to be ready to go next season? I think there's a decision that Eddie Howe needs to make. I think it's getting more and more difficult to leave Bruno Guimaraes on the bench. He had an excuse yesterday. He'd come back from international football. He had to travel, obviously, across from Brazil in order to get back in time to train and play. So we had that excuse, the travel time, the jet lag, all the rest of it. There's no excuse going into Friday. So that for me is the big decision. Do you go with Shelvey? Do you go with Bruno? Personally, I didn't think Shelvey played well yesterday. I thought Bruno, although it was kind of a dead rubber and the game was done, I thought Bruno actually tried to get us playing and tried to dictate the play and create things and look to play forward. That's what we need going into the game against the Wolves on Friday night. So another very, very interesting call to be made. That is for sure. But Mark as well mentioned another one. Have you seen the video of Janola's death stare on Sky Sports yesterday after being laughed at by the presenter on his views of Newcastle? Disrespectful towards him. It's the typical situation with Sky, unfortunately. They take everything with Newcastle at times as a bit of a joke. We're seen as a bit of an afterthought. But David Ginola, I thought, played that situation very, very well. And I think he made the Sky presenter sit up and listen. I think he made some valid points. I don't agree with everything that he said. There's arguments that he's only just talked about Newcastle now because of the takeover. There's part of that I agree with, but I think I also agree that there are some players that actually, even that are playing right now, that I think need to be moved on in the summer. I really do. I think we need to really get that negative old mentality of our players and our club out the door and get in a fresh emphasis in the way in which we think, as well as the way in which we play, because the mentality is key in everything. But again, just my opinion on that. But we have another guest, and we've got another regular to come in, and I'm looking forward to what he's got to say after Sunday's defeat. But let's welcome in Alan. How you doing, Alan?
Hi, Holly, Pete. Well, I'm on the floor. I must admit, Pete, Holly, shambles second half, shambles. And what disappointed us most was, I said, Pete, a couple of weeks ago that we wouldn't play like West Ham did when Tottenham destroyed them 3-1 at the stadium. And we did in the second half, played exactly like West Ham. The basically, Tottenham are a counter-attacking team, fast on the break. The first half was superb, Holly. I thought was exactly how I wanted. But the second half played right into Tottenham's hands. And we basically got cut open time and time again. Bad defensive mistakes. I have to slightly disagree, Pete, with the first goal. I thought it was a good goal, and the third one. But the second and fourth and fifth ones were terrible. Terrible. The first one, Pete, the reason why I thought it was a good goal, Shaw scored exactly the same one against Brighton. Exactly the same. But it was a corner, but virtually the same. And the third one I thought was well worked. If we had scored that one, I would have been raving about it for ages. But the second goal and the fourth and fifth were terrible. Your point about the centre halves, totally justified with Dan Burn. It's about levels, Holly, Pete. It's about levels. Like I said to you a couple of weeks ago, Pete, about Jacob Murphy. Will Jacob Murphy get you in the top six? Will Dan Burn get you in the top six, Holly? That's what you're going forward. You've got to look at the squad. And I think one or two people are taking Januela's comments out of context, really. He did say scrap the whole lot. But what he meant was a lot of them aren't good enough, in my opinion. And at the end, he did say you cannot scrap the whole lot altogether. But he did mean that 4 or 5 had to go, and at a time. And he did mean over a period of time. He did mention 5 or 6 years before they build up the club. So it was a game that brought us all back down to earth with a bump. And you've got to move on. Simply, they've got a better players, Holly, Pete, and they've got a better coach. Eddie Howe is learning his trade, even though he's been in the game a long time. But then the tactics in the second half, well, that was him. I mean, how do you give man of the match to? Lascelles, because you only let 1 goal in, my favourite player, or basically, like nobody was any good, really, to be honest. I thought the midfield was very poor. Joe Linton, Willock, Fraser was non-existent, but you could say that to virtually everyone. So it's back to the drawing board. It's the Wolves game on Friday, and we've got to put something in. I would be worried if we got beat off Wolves, Pete, Holly. I would be slightly looking over my shoulder because the pressure will be back on. Regarding the Everton-Burnley game, guys, I want to draw. I want to draw. I want the agony of Everton to continue, but I do want Burnley to catch up, because I think if Burnley do win, then there'll be 2 teams believing they can get out of it, and they'll only be 6, 7 points behind we. And if we get beat off Wolves, then the pressure will start to mount, actually. So, add your question, Everton win or a draw. As much as I want Everton down, like I say, I'm desperate for them to get, after the abuse they give after the beating were, I want them down. So it was the worst performance. I'm hoping Trippier can get back in the next 2 or 3 weeks, guys. I don't know. that Callum Wilson, the latest update with him was a bit poor. I get the impression he's not going to play this season, in my opinion. I hope I'm wrong, but I just get that sneaking feeling he won't play. So, as you know, a lot of the players are playing for their futures. I mean, I know you're right what you're saying, Pete, and you know, on the positive side, it was all about staying in the league. I mean, after the Watford game in January, I actually did think we're going down here. So we've got to take a backward step and say Eddie Howe's done a fantastic job here to get where we are. And we are 9 points clear of the relegation zone and start afresh in the summer with 3 or 4 quality buys. But the attitude of the players when we went 2-1 and 3-1 down was very, very poor. But unfortunately, guys, this is the attitude where we finished 10th, 13th and 12th in the league. They just ain't good enough, apart from 3 or 4 players. I would struggle from one hand, the players I would want to keep. I do get a bit saddened with the ACM debate. You know, people saying after 50 million, you've got to build a team around the ASM. He'll always be, you know, he always have his, people that can't say he doesn't do enough. But I think we need 25 players, better quality than ACM. So he just comes on as a substitute, really. But I agree, Holly, with Dwight Gale wholeheartedly. I mean, another angle, why was Wood even starting? Because, I mean, he's been around the world, Pete. So why wasn't Gale at the start? I mean, we'll make the excuse up about Bruno going around the world. Well, surely Wood's been here and there and everywhere as well. So why didn't... So that's the biggest mystery of all, why Gale isn't even getting any game time at all. That is amongst everybody. There must be a massive attitude problem. I mean, look at Dele Alli at Everton. They've signed him and he's not getting a game. So there's another angle. Dele Alli's been bought by Everton and he isn't getting a game. And it's all to do with attitude, Pete. So there must be a matter there. Must be.
You're absolutely right, Alan. You are absolutely right. And this is the thing: is that we're looking at it on the outside, and we're looking at these guys, and we're thinking, you know, these are. Dwight Gale scored goals for Newcastle United, albeit mostly in the Championship. But he scored goals. He's got a little bit of pace. He knows where the net is. You know, we need a striker. Why is he not playing? But there is something not quite right. Dele Alli's just signed for a deal worth £40 million at Everton and can't even get off the bench. There is something not right currently with one or two of these players, and I'm not just talking about Newcastle players. Obviously, I talked about Dele Alli as well. There are other things at play here that we are not aware about. We're not aware of as fans of the club, and I don't think we would even be aware of it until Dwight Gale leaves the club. Which I've talked about it before on this show, and I've said I'm convinced that Dwight Gale will leave in the summer, whether he is sold for a nominal fee or whether he is paid out of his contract. Now, someone mentioned that obviously he got a new contract in the summer. I think Newcastle United are not going to want Dwight Gale to be sitting out of the 25, because I don't think he gets in the 25 next season, the 25-man squad. I don't think they're going to be wanting him to be training every day in the 25-man, outside the 25-man squad, and be getting paid a wage. I think they'd rather just take a hit, pay him off, and then he goes find a club elsewhere. But the hope, I think, will be that because he'll have offers. The hope will be that he takes the move and he moves to the accord. But what's interesting that you mentioned good points, but in particular, we haven't really talked about the ASM conversation. And I want to get Holly's thoughts on this, because obviously just before the game yesterday, there was the reports from the Daily Mail of Alan St. Maximin. There's a plan that the club want to sell him. They're looking at around £50 million. Aston Villa, obviously, were interested in him, as this report says. But on top of that, there's been a lot of kind of negativity aimed towards Alan Saint-Maximin. Even before and after the game, there was talks that, you know, he had to perform, he had to give us a performance on Sunday, and a lot have come out and said, you know, he didn't give us that performance. What are your thoughts, Holly, with regards to ASM in general?
I think Saint-Maximin has undeniable natural talent. You know, he's just a very skilled player, and I think that does come naturally to him. But I think the problem with him is that he isn't a finished product yet. And I question whether he will ever be a finished product, because I don't know with Saint-Maximin. Some weeks he'll be the star player. He does everything right. Every single thing you'd want him to do, he does. And then the next week, he's a liability, to be honest. Sometimes he costs us games. And I think that's the risk you take, especially when you bring him on off the bench. You think this can go one or two ways. If it's like a 0-0, he'll either win us the game or lose us the game often. And I think right now, especially this season, we can't take those sorts of risks. But going forward, you could potentially have a world-class player on your hands who Newcastle have kind of discovered and then developed. And if you get the right balance, the right players alongside him, people that can match his pace, so that when they are on the attack, it's a lot easier for him with some support alongside him, then he could be brilliant. But again, it's about finding that right balance. Will it ever happen? I really don't know. And do you really want to have to try and build your whole team and sign players just cater towards this one player who might or might not perform? I don't know. So I can totally understand why a lot of fans want to get rid of him. I think it's a massive gamble. We could either be gutted because we'll let him go and he'll end up being brilliant, or we'll be like, I'm happy we got the 50 million because he'll go elsewhere and not really perform. But at this moment in time, I think he's had many chances, never really stepped up to the mark for me, and I probably wouldn't be sad to see him go in the summer, unfortunately, unless something changes between now and the end of the season.
Do you not think, though, Holly, he's not surrounded by better players? See, well, I was younger, obviously, than yourself, Holly. I remember Ginola was fantastic for us for 2 years. Then he went to Tottenham and played even better because he was surrounded by better players. And that's my worry. Like, yes, he might be sold for 50 million, and a lot of fans are saying, oh, take the money, go. But if you're surrounded by, I would say, average players, you're going to want to move to, in his eyes, a better team. And my worry is that he'll be better at a better team with better quality players, i.e. Tottenham that we just played. That's my fear. I'm from an age where constantly we sell with better players and we don't give them time or don't give them the actual space to have been surrounded by better players. Surely we're hoping that we're going to get 4 or 5 more quality players in the summer. Definitely need 2 centre-backs, like Pete and yourself have said, because that game on Sunday yesterday showed that Dan Burn will only reach a certain level, guys. He was torn to bits yesterday, and I agree, Pete. They're the sort of, he played really well against Chelsea, but you switch off against the top teams one moment and you lose the game, and the top centre halves don't do that. That's me worry, Holly, that yes, a lot of fans will be happy we've got 50 million in the bank, but unless you've got a replacement just as good or better, then you know it's not worthwhile. I think we should keep ACM for at least another couple of years, unless the player is adamant and comes out and says, I don't want to play for you anymore. That's a different ball game altogether. I've been down this road many a time where the start, I mean, it's been hinted that he's only on £35,000 a week and he wants a better contract, where he sees Shelby on 80,000. If that's true, then who's to say he's not right and demanding a better contract and being unhappy? As far as Shelby and Bruno, Pete, there's no argument. Bruno should be in. There's no sense of sentimentality, Holly, with me. Shelby's been at the club for 5 or 6 years. So inconsistent. Good one game, lousy for 4 or 5. Bruno should be in. You should get him bedded in for these last 8 games, and then he's used to the English game, and then the season finishes and we'll get prepared for next year. For me, I've got a list as long as my arm, really, Holly, Pete, who I would want at the club. Look at Longstaff. His contract comes to an end in June. There's been no word of him signing a new one. So is there one player?
There's reports today that he's ready to sign a new contract. I read that just before we came on air. So there's a chance that he signs a new contract, whether people are happy with Sean Longstaff signing a new contract or not. It's looking like, and to be fair, the local journalists have been like mooting that for a while, that there's a high chance that he stays at the club going into next season. Go on, Alan. Sorry.
Pete, I would want him as a squad player. I do. I think you've got to have that bit of Geordie blood in the squad. They know what the team and the club's all about. And this is where I agree with you, Nola. You've got to have a family. You've got to have that bit where everybody's in it together. Everybody's got to be together. Enjoy working with each other. And, I mean, I know it's the start of your working life, Holly, or just starting out, Pete, but if you're not happy with who you work with, your productivity goes down the pan. So you've got to have a group of 25 players that are happy to work well together. And I think that's what Ginola was at. With a Man City and Liverpool, they're all in it together. But again, getting back to ACM, whether he's the answer for working back and tracking back, which I've mentioned before in other shows, then you need better players to come on, but I think you've got to keep him for another 2 years myself, Holly, to be honest with you, until we get better players and a much better squad. But it was a wake-up call yesterday for everybody that thought, a 9-match unbeaten run, a lot of people are getting, they carried away a little bit about how good these players are, and unfortunately we'll finish where I think we are now, Pete, Holly, maybe it's 14th. There's a chance, to finish 9th. There's not much difference between 9th and where we are now, but with the fixtures we've got, I don't think we'll do that. But let's hope for better. I'll be there on Friday, Holly. Managed to sneak a ticket from somewhere, so I'll be actually at the game, Pete. It's hard to get tickets now.
Yeah.
You couldn't give them away 6 months ago, and that's how far we've come. I mean, I remember, Pete, the podcast we had on the Monday before the takeover. We've just been beaten off Wolves 2-1 down at Molineux. Everybody, and I was the same on the floor.
Yeah.
And no sign of a takeover. And then the next day, Saudis have agreed the deal, and I couldn't sleep for 24 hours. That will be one of the moments, Holly, I couldn't sleep that day. And that day waiting for the official announcement was absolutely murder. I know you were talking about doing a programme on the day the takeover happened, Pete. But so be it. I was just so delighted. I could have actually spent some money and give my wife a meal. Went out for a wife for my meal. That's how happy I was. But she was downstairs. I hope she doesn't hear that. But I was. I do believe, Holly, you've got a lot of good things, and I agree. It's going to take 5 or 6 years because Man City, Liverpool, Chelsea, Man United are all after the best players, just like we want to be, except they've got a massive head start on where they can offer European football. And this is where it's going to be the up-and-coming players, the players that want to be here, and that's what you need. I heard in one of the tablets that one of the players, Meneley, who used to play for Sunderland, had put them off by saying that there's nothing here at Newcastle. It's a poor place. There's nothing there to do. Well, that's always been the story, but the world's a smaller place, and you can travel all around the country and around the world in no time these days. So that doesn't argue. And I've always said it, where there's money, players will always come, Pete, Holly, always. So I'll just leave it at that, guys. Honestly, off the floor, because I'm going on my Tottenham podcast later on tonight, so I'm going to have the grovel to them. But, at the end of the day, we've got to look back and say Tottenham, far better players than us. and a coach that's at the top of his game. And the reason why I see the better coach, Ollie, is because he's won things. He's won the Premier League title. He's won other things. And that's why I'm not knocking Eddie Howe. He's got a lot to learn and he's still learning. And I just hope he can become the first English manager to win the Premier League. Because that's what it means, guys, if Eddie Howe does it. And that's why a lot of people forget. No English manager has ever won the Premier League. So, but he's got it in him, and I'm sure he can do it. Enough of me rabbiting on, Pete Holly, in case you've got other people trying to get on. But let's hope for better things on Friday and perk me up. And like I say, Burnley, Everton, one's each for me. A draw. Make Everton sweat.
Oh, yeah, I'd take that all day long. As long as they don't win, as long as Burnley don't win, then I'm happy. And I think from Holly's perspective, I think Holly feels exactly the same. As long as they don't win, I think that's good news for us, and I think we're in a position where, you know, we can be quite comfortable with our chances of staying in the league. So, fingers crossed that is the case, and we keep plugging on. But Alan, absolute pleasure as always to have you on. Great points, great to talk to you.
Sorry, Holly, I'm a bit down tonight. I can't get over that, but I totally agree with your point with Dwight Gale, mind. Totally agree with it. So you're not the only one. You must be in the dog and parrot talking to McDonald and Steve Jones, because you never hear about Steve Jones anymore, Pete, do you? How wonderful coach he is. So he's went in the background. There's another thing.
Yeah, in actual fact, Jones, I think in a couple of articles that I've read actually over the last week, Graham Jones has been getting some rave reviews. In that actually he's working wonders in the background. But the key is that you don't hear about it anymore. It's not a massive talking point. He's just going about his business in the way that every kind of assistant coach kind of does really, and focuses on the training ground, and that's exactly how it should be. Are
you worried about Dan Ashworth, Holly, Pete, that's taken so long? You hear rumours that September that he could come into the club. Are you worried about it happening, or is it Castaigne who's coming? It's just a matter he's on the phone for the summer, and he'd be given directions on the phone, and you know, like Brighton are playing hardball, or do we pay the compensation? Or have you heard anything about that? It seems to be like just went quiet, and you know, it could be up to November before he comes into the club.
Holly, what do you think? Dan Ashworth, is it an issue that the gardening leave hasn't been settled, or are you worried, as Alan said, about the potential of him, sitting at home until November?
I'm not too worried. I do still think we should be able to get him in during the summer, and obviously I'm hoping that that's the case. I think they'll get everything resolved by then, but I never expect him to come in before the end of the season, because I don't think it would make much sense to kind of disturb all the backroom staff in that way. So I think it will happen in the summer, and I think he should get down to business straight away.
Yeah, I won't worry, Alan. As far as I'm concerned, I think the deal's done.
Yeah,
he wouldn't have left Brighton otherwise. He will be part of Newcastle United's team at some point, and I think Newcastle are quite relaxed about it. I think they're even that relaxed that they're quite comfortable in going into a summer window, targeting who they want to target, ready for the new season, with the view to Dan Ashworth taking the reins in November, if it comes to that. Personally, I think they'll agree a deal in the summer. I think Brighton will wait until the season's done. And actually, there's been some talk from Brighton's point of view that they're close to appointing a replacement for Dan Ashworth. So if they're already looking at confirming a replacement for him, surely they'll want this saga over and done with, and just allow the deal to be done and move on, and everyone can kind of move forward. It's not like Newcastle have gone, behind their backs or done anything untoward. I think Newcastle have been up front and done things the right way. Although Brighton will be frustrated that Dan Ashworth's leaving, I think Newcastle have not done anything wrong and done everything the right way. So therefore, I think that deal will get done in the summer when the season's ended. So no worries from me. I think the deal will get done, and he will certainly play a huge part in our future at Newcastle United. There's no doubt about that. But I'll let you go, Alan.
Okay.
Come back next week. Hopefully,
I won't say anything about me new me left back target or ASM. Sorry, I've been told it's called senile dementia, guys, in the chat. Senile dementia.
ACM.
I'll let you go, Pete. Sorry for interrupting.
No worries. Yeah, I thought you were talking about an attacking centre midfielder, but yeah, you talk about Alisson Maximin.
It's called dementia.
Yeah, don't worry, Alan. It's a pleasure to have you on. Great talking points as always, and definitely see you next week for some more talk and hopefully 3 points. Fingers crossed.
That's what we need, guys. Get this relegation matter out the window so we can plan for next year.
Definitely.
Thanks, guys.
You take care. See you later.
Thank you, Holly.
Great to have Alan on. Always got some great talking points, as always. And yeah, I think, interesting talk about ASM. I'm surprised you think you'd be happy to sell him, Molly. I really am. I thought you'd be one that would kind of like, wrap your blanket around and say, no, we want to keep him at Newcastle. We want to keep him and build with him. But yeah, I understand your point of view. The one thing I will say, from the opposition fans' perspective, is that I was walking out of the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, walking back to my car, which was a little walk away from the ground, and all I could hear, obviously they were delighted about the game, delighted about the fact that they'd won, but all I could hear with any sort of Newcastle talk was, Alisson Maximin, he's a good player. He's a tricky player. He's skillful. He's fast on the ball, and that's the conversation. If they ever, and this was just fans streaming out the stadium, and that's the only Newcastle talk I heard. Alan, Alisson Maximin is a good player. He played really well, and that's my worry. And I said this to Chris on previous shows going back, is that we could kind of cut Alisson Maximin off and say, right, yeah, sell him off, make a profit, and get someone else in. But I just worry. I worry from our perspective that we sell him off, and he goes to another team, a better team currently than us, and really kind of tears it up. The one thing I mentioned last week is that on away days on Loaded, is that with Chris, the one thing I've noticed is that him and Bruno have already struck up a really good relationship, and good players recognise good players. So Bruno's gone in there and instantly taken a liking to Joe Linton. Nationality relations, that they speak the same language. There's that common ground, that common understanding. But it also seems to have really struck up a relationship with Alisson Maximin. So is Kieran Trippier. And they're top players. And me personally, I think top players recognise top players. And I think rather than Alisson Maximin fitting in to our style of play currently, although I thought he tracked back better, certainly in the first half against Tottenham, I think we need to find a system that suits him to play the way that he wants to play. I thought there were times on Sunday that he didn't have any support around him. There was very rarely an overlap from target, which I was surprised about. He's normally very, very good at getting in and around St. Maximin. He didn't. He stayed quite strict in his kind of mould of being a left back. He didn't really look to get forward, which is part of his game. It tended to be Joe Linton, but he wasn't always there, so he didn't really have a lot of support. And there was a lot of times that he was always double upped. He always had Emerson and Romero marking, with then a third player, mostly sort of like a Kulusevski, coming back to support. And he was always kind of double or triple marked. So it was very, very difficult to get into the game. But at times he did, and he did look dangerous. I think we need to persist with him. At 25 years old, he's not even in his prime yet. And I think he's still got levels, he's still got gears to go at this level, at Premier League level. That's just my opinion. I think there's still more to come from him. But we'll see. Quick one from. So we are united. Said evening to family. Hope all have had a good day. My question is, please, can we give Dwight Gale a run out Friday evening? We've talked about Dwight Gale a lot, more than any other show before tonight. I think some people want Dwight Gale in. Some people are saying in the chat, no, we don't want Dwight Gale. We've got Steve that said, Gale got a 2-year contract not long ago. It needs clarification. Not good enough. All the speculation. Eddie got it tactically wrong yesterday. Players look knackered. They shouldn't know. They shouldn't look knackered. They've had a week in Dubai. They've had 2 weeks off. They shouldn't look knackered. They just shouldn't. Shaw, Bruno, fair enough. International duty. In fact, Shaw wasn't on international duty. He got sent back, but he was touch and go whether he was going to be fit. But Bruno, fair enough, but he came off the bench. Wood, okay, maybe on international duty had to travel quite far. Other than that, all those players were part of that team that went to Dubai on that training camp. They should not look tired. And I don't know whether you noticed this, Holly, but that midfield three looked tired. They didn't have that same energy, that same press about them. Joe Linton, Willock in particular, that press, winning the ball high up the pitch. There wasn't that same energy or motivation there like there has been in previous weeks. I don't know if you noticed that yourself.
Yeah, I definitely noticed we weren't creating a lot within the midfield at all. Most of the time, I think they just kind of went under the radar. You almost forgot they were playing. And I think, like you mentioned earlier, obviously going off Janola's comments about having a kind of squad refresh, and you said you feel like that's kind of necessary in time because of the mentality of the players, because there's a lot of players who've been here 5-6 years that have a mentality like survival's good enough, because that's what was instilled in that team for so many years consistently. And I think that's what we're starting to see. Obviously, with players like maybe John Joe Shelby, not so much Willock because he hasn't been here that long, they do have this mentality just ingrained in them. And I wanted to believe that when we did go on that 9-game run, that was starting to get stamped out a little bit by Eddie Howe, because I think he's a brilliant man manager. And I thought they just looked so motivated, really fighting to stay in the team because they realised how much of an exciting project at Newcastle. But then just like that, there's a relapse, and it seems like we're back to last season or even earlier on this season. And that's something I've never understood with this team. We'll go on a bit of a run, and then the mentality just totally changes back to how it was when we were kind of in a bad run of form, when we were in and around the bottom three. So, yeah, I definitely do agree with you earlier on. I think that mentality is probably not going to get stamped out until we do get rid of kind of the more senior players, which is a shame, because I think a lot of them have been very good servants for the club. But if that's going to be the kind of mentality of them, then I just don't think we can persist with them.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's going to take a few windows. It's not going to happen straight away or overnight. It's going to take that gradual progression where we could even get rid of 6 or 7 players. It doesn't massively affect us in the summer, but we will ship out those players. New players will come in, different mentality, like you said, and I think we'll see a different approach to Newcastle United. Right, I'll bring in our next guest. So we've got another regular to the show. We've got Darren. How you doing, Darren?
Hello, Peter. Hello, Holly.
Hi, Darren.
Hello. Holly, I think you hit the nail on the head about St. Maximin. Peter and I are not going to like it, but I'm not a big fan of him. I think he's got to go. He's not a team player. Eddie Howe likes players who can go up and forward as a team, and he just doesn't do it. And I think that's why everybody's speculating, will he go? It's just not good to me, my personal opinion. Peter and I like him, but I totally agree with Holly. In the summer, do I get £50 million for him? Yes, and try and look. That's where his job is, to look for players who can do the job. Do you know what I mean?
I understand that point. It's look, it is about the team ultimately. I just think every team needs that sort of special player. And I think Alan St. Maximin is that special player for us. I don't forget what he did for the team under Steve Bruce for 2 years, nearly 2.5 years, nearly, where he single-handedly at times, was giving us an opportunity to stay in the league. I think, that in one sense, should then be rewarded with at least an opportunity to show us what he can make, what he can do
I'll
in a
accept,
better squad.
I'll accept that. But like, you look at Shelby, when Harry Kane was coming deep, he was nowhere to pick Harry Kane up. Harry Kane was coming on in our half, receive the ball and send it to Son. How's the centre half doing that? And I had no. Do you know what I mean? I like one. Even watching Harry Kane, and that's how you watched the defence. How they were getting split every time.
Well, that's exactly what happened. And to be fair, I think Steve Hastie's in the chat. He alluded to it as well. But we noticed it during the game in that because Shelby wasn't picking up Harry Kane or wasn't aware that Harry Kane was around him. What then happened is Dan Burn was then getting brought out. Mm-hmm. So if you notice, particularly for Son's goal, so he gets basically brought in, he gets drawn in by Harry Kane that comes in really, really deep. The ball then gets whipped in and behind Dan Burn, who's well out of position, can't get back in. The ball gets whipped into the box. Son gets an opportunity to take a touch on the ball on the penalty spot and then find his position where he slots it in the net. Like, that is not okay. But that starts not necessarily with Dan Burn. It starts with the midfield. You know, Dan Burn ultimately should have kept his position. He shouldn't be getting sucked out so deep and out of position to allow players to play the ball in and behind. It was far too easy. But I think someone like Bruno Guimaraes stops that from happening, in my opinion. Because I think tactically he's a little bit more aware. He's certainly a lot more mobile and can get around the pitch. And I think he stops that from happening. I think John Joe Shelby got played big time by Tottenham. I think they outplayed him tactically and physically yesterday, and he didn't look strong at all.
You look leggy in midfield a lot of the time. Shelby, like you say, how they're tired. They've been fresh. They've been nice hot weather. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. The only thing is that I know Eddie Howe said he had a bout of illness, so maybe that's what it was, and that he hasn't had maybe the training that we assume that he had. I don't think we'll know for sure, but I think it's very, very clear that Shelby wasn't at the races tactically for that game. And I think for me, from that point of view, Bruno Guimaraes needs to start. And if you look at, I don't know what your thoughts are on this, Darren. You look at the game on Friday against Wolves, no Ruben Neves in the team, who likes to play that similar role for Bruno Guimaraes. So I think Bruno Guimaraes is going to get a lot of time on the ball if he starts. I think that's a perfect game for him.
Yeah, totally agree. Because he's a good little player in midfield. He dictates where he wants to pass it to. Do you know what I mean? But they're a little playmaker, so him missing it's a big bonus for us. But we've got to turn up on Friday. We've got to turn up. The crowd will be not buzzing, but like 3 weeks not having a home game, it will all be so. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. They'll be all good for that. Because the crowd now, like 3 weeks out of a home game, we all be like want to get in there and support and get behind them, because it's a long time not playing at St James. It's 4 games on the trot away. It's hard for the fans. They've been London 3 times and a lot of hard money getting spent, and like a 5-1. I don't think the players realise how much it costs to go down there. That's another thing. And they say they do, but they don't. It's not cheap going down London. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And obviously Holly knows that more than anybody, because Holly has been travelling up from Newcastle to these games, and you know it's a lot. And I think it does need to be repaid with effort. I think in previous games, I go back to the Emirates game, the other game in London that I was at, where we didn't win, for example, but we worked hard. We tried our best. We created chances. We never gave in. Yes, Arsenal were the better team. They deserve to win the game. But you can clap the players off at that point, because you know that they've given everything. There were certain players yesterday that I don't think gave everything. I think there was a defeatist attitude once it went 3-1, and that doesn't wash in the Premier League, and that certainly shouldn't be allowed to wash under Eddie Howe. Do you think if the players, in the top 6, if the players
concede a goal during they've accepted getting beat already. That's something like the body language. Do you know what I mean? Like if we're playing a lesser team, they've got more. They think we've got a chance to come back. If you're playing a big 6 team or a big top 8 team, as soon as a goal go in, do their mentality change because that's us beat now? That's another thing I look at. You look at the body, the attitude of the players. It's like that's. Do you know what I mean?
Well, we talked about this earlier. Myself and Horry talked about this earlier, Darren, with regards to the attitude. And, Holly, I think, alluded to it again with, it's a mentality thing. This is not this season. This is going back 2 years under Steve Bruce. It's probably going back even longer, even under Rafa Benitez. Although we enjoyed Rafa as manager, it goes back to that. It's that defeatist mentality that if you go 1-0, 2-0 down, there's no way of getting back into a game. I think we only did it once or twice under Rafa Benitez.
Yeah.
We did it a couple of times under Bruce as well. We need to get that defeated mentality out, and we need to keep working. But that's something that some of the current crop of players are just not able to do. That mentality, when it gets ingrained in a player, is very hard to get out. Whereas a new player that's coming into the squad that hasn't got that mentality, it's easy to work with that player in order to keep their mentality positive and to keep them focused. Sounds like a really small thing, but actually, in the grand scheme of things, in a squad game of football, it's big. And I think the only way to get rid of that is new players. You look at example, Liverpool. Liverpool, you look at the squad of players that Liverpool had when Jurgen Klopp took over. It's unrecognisable to the squad of players that they've got now. And you had some of those players that were, the likes of Skirtle, for example, the likes of Mignolet, who we talked about earlier on in the show. Players like that had a negative mentality. They weren't great players, but, concede a goal, head drops. Like, it's that type of mentality. What did Jurgen Klopp do? He saw them out the season, then moved them on.
Yeah.
Moved them on, said, right, get them out, get players in without that mentality, players that he can work with, players that he can get the best out of.
It took him 5 years to do that, to win a trophy.
Oh,
so if it took him 5 years, it's going to take Newcastle at least 5 years to be anywhere near that.
Yeah, it may well be. And we might have to be patient with regards to winning trophies. I think the one thing that we've got that Liverpool didn't have is finances.
Yeah.
So maybe that might accelerate things. The fact that we've got the finances to improve players. I don't know what you think about this, Holly, with regards to changing that mentality, how long it could potentially take for us to kind of eradicate that negative mentality when we concede a goal or two.
It's got to be between 3 and 5 years for me, because I think you need to get rid of pretty much the core of the team, the players that have been there for a long, long time before that happens, or certainly most of them. And you're not going to be able to do that in 1 or 2 transfer windows, because, you can only sign, 5 players a window, something like that. It takes time to build up a squad. So probably for me, a minimum of 3 seasons, but you're looking at probably 3 to 5, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And just to add to both of you, Holly and Darren, I think it's around 24 points we've lost from winning positions.
But if that was again, that's under Bruce. His mentality was to sit back, hope we get a counter and score. And we ever scored, sit back and create nothing. And I think that's what players got used to so much. That Eddie Howe's come in, it took them until at least after New Year to stop that sort of mentality going on. Definitely.
You take half of those 24 points. We're in the running to challenge for Europe. Sounds weird me saying that, but that's the reality. You take half of those 24 points that we've lost in winning positions, and we're genuinely challenging for Europe. We're in and around where Wolves are, and Wolves have been considered, although we played them Friday, are being talked about as having a fantastic season and are in great form. But that's where we could have been without losing those positions. It's so hard to be in a winning position in a football match, to take the lead in games. We've done that so many times to the point where we could have had 24 more points. That's a mentality thing. We had that great run of 9 games, but ultimately over the course of the season, our mentality has not been right, and we need to get rid of that. Personally, I think that starts with the captain. I think the captain's armband will change. I don't know what your guys' thoughts are on that, Holly and Darren. I think the captaincy will change in the summer, and I think the whole mentality of the club will start to change with better players coming in.
I totally agree with you, Pete. I don't know about you, Holly. I think we need to look for a good captain. We haven't got a leader who comes and do a face interview with a TV, like Sky interview, or we can't say, oh, he's a great. We haven't the Cells are a great captain. Shelby's not a great captain. We haven't got a leader to show the rest of the players. This is what we're going to do. That's what I think.
Would you not say Trippier as a captain?
Yes, as a vice captain, I prefer to be centre half as a captain. Me personally, I like a centre half or a centre midfield player. But as a captain, I like but I would use Trippier as a vice captain. Give him at the time being to see if he can see how he goes. But I prefer a centre half as a captain, or a centre midfield as a captain. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah, no, but like I say, more than entitled to that opinion. Would you agree with that, Holly? With regards to, when Darren mentioned that, I thought initially Trippier, because I think he will probably get the armband in the summer. But would you see Trippier as more of a vice captain, or do you think he's the one really that gets the armband, or do you think, like Darren, that we might buy a player that may come in and take the armband?
For me, I don't think you should ever give the captain's armband to a player just from the offset. Like, even if they do come in with a big reputation and a name, I think it's something that should probably be earned, not just given. The same with the number 9 shirt in some aspects. Like, we saw that with Joe Linton, happen and stuff, and that hurt me because I think in Newcastle that's something that should be earned. But that's going off topic slightly, but I just think it's something that you should work towards. But going into next season, I think Trippier's got to be the natural choice for me, because he has obviously been injured for quite a big part of the season. He hasn't played loads and loads of games, but the games that he did play, he really, really transformed everything. The dressing room, on the pitch, even when he's injured now, you can see him. He's in the stands. He's been at every game and he's been supporting the lads. And like I mentioned on a podcast before with Steve, we were lucky enough to be sat close to Kieran Trippier at one of the games when he was injured, and you could just see the passion in him. He cared so much. He was like a normal fan. Like, if you didn't know who he was, you'd think he was a fan, because that's how much he cared. And he really, really does want the best for the club. So for me, I think he's a natural captain and he should get that armband.
Yeah, I totally agree that if you're showing passion, you could give him next season, and then you could get a good centre half, or somebody to go be the vice captain. Do you know what I mean? Like, you do it that way as well. But we need leaders in that team. We haven't got any leaders at the minute to say stand up and come for and have some respect for yourself. Because if we're going 1-3-1 down, you think how many it's going to be? You it's going to be 4, 5, 6. Tottenham missed a few chances as well. That's why it could have been worse.
Yeah, you're right. But I think you've made a key point there. Is that looking at leaders now, natural leaders, players that are leaders on the pitch and leaders behind the scenes, they cost money.
Yeah,
you don't get them cheap. You can buy young players with potential and build them into players that could potentially become leaders. But we need leaders now, and they're players that are ready-made, ready to go. Will come in like Trippier and make an instant impact. And they unfortunately cost a lot of money. So it's a case of we need to look for those players in the summer. Are there players on a free? Are there players going into the last year of their contracts? That's what the club are currently looking at right now. And I know Eddie has kind of alluded to the fact that, they're already looking at their summer business. They're the type of players that we really do need to be looking at and trying to get confirmed for this summer to take this team to the next level. I always use Aston Villa as an example. Buendia, the likes of Coutinho, the likes of Luca Dean, all experienced quality players. Luca Dean's been injured, but Coutinho has definitely changed the way in which Aston Villa play, and he's made some of their players around him play better. Yes, they didn't win at the weekend, but they're in a very, very comfortable position, doing really well, and looking to then make that next step next season as part of their progression. They're doing exactly what they need to do. We need to do that. We've got the finances. We're probably a year or two behind Villa, but I think with the finances, we can catch up with them quite quickly. And it only takes one good season.
Yeah.
One good season. Like Wolves. Wolves are fighting for Europe right now. Wolves didn't have a great season last season. I think we finished above Wolves the back end of last season. I think Wolves finished 13th. We ended up finishing 12th. But look at Wolves. They bounced back, had a great season, fighting for Europe. The seasons change year on year. So the pundits like to say, oh, yeah, it'll be a building block. 10th maybe is a good season for Newcastle. Well, why not push for 8th? Other teams have done it in previous years. There's no reason why we can't. If we hit the ground running, good signings, get them in early doors, July the 1st. I've said it for a while. July the 1st, I want for what we didn't have for so many years under Newcastle United is July the 1st, pre-season training. I want 3 or 4 new players walking into that training ground, ready to start pre-season, not signing a week before the season started. We need a full pre-season training with a number of new signings, ready to embed them into the season, ready to go, that when we start the season, we can hit the ground running. And I think with that, we've got an opportunity to push like other teams are pushing. But it's a case of, right, we need to get those deals done, get those players in, get those leaders in, like you talked about, Darren, and really making sure that we kind of, really kind of stomp our authority on the Premier League next season. That's for sure. But anything else before we move on, Darren?
That's it. Thank you very much. Fully enjoyed it again. To see you next week. Hope we get 3 points on Friday. Hard game, but I fancy 2-1, hopefully. But that's what I'm hoping. But the hard game, but I hope we'll win.
To be fair, at St James's Park under the lights, anything's possible.
Yeah, I've got my ticket as well, so I'll be looking forward to it.
Definitely.
Right,
Darren, you take care. Pleasure as always.
Take care.
Bye.
See you later. Great to have Darren on. A regular on the show. Good points as always. And fingers crossed for those 3 points. Now, there are a number of questions in the chat that I want to pose to you, Holly. But at that point in the show, I think we all need to take a very, very deep breath because it's time. You know what time it is. It's time for the sponsors. So, we need to make sure that we're ready for that. So, first and foremost, we have our sponsors, Spider VPN, for all the internet security. They are the boys to trust. If you want to protect your computer online, go to Spider VPN. Huge supporters of NUFC Matters, and for a long time as well, they've been huge supporters. So really appreciate your support. Go and check out Spider VPN. We also have skipsandbins.com. So telephone number 0800 2545 253. For emails, inquiries at skipsandbins.com. Website www.skipsandbins.com. Easy contract free and pay as you go waste collection. We also have L&G Family Funeral Directors. Huge support again, long-time supporters of NUFC Matters. Contact them on 0191 389 7245. We have Garden of Healing Dispensary, CBD, hemp and cannabinoid specialist. Contact them on their website www.thegohd.com. We have as well Arcot Interiors. Huge support of the channel, Arcot Interiors. Big shout out to Chris and the lads. Google Arcot Interiors for top class kitchens. I know he's in the chat tonight. John Justice Allen. Make sure you support everything related to QTech, the makers of pool tables and snooker tables in Wallsend, Newcastle. we have as well our new sponsor, Klikai. Thanks also to Klikai. You can find Klikai at clearun.game, Google Play or App Store. Meet the new Game Over screen. Make sure you check out Jab Signature. Again, jabsignature.co.uk for all their clothing range. Massive support for all our media emphasis, media arts. Make sure you support them. Again, huge support to the channel as well. Newcastle Legends. Make sure you get involved with Newcastle Legends. Click that like, comment, or share. Subscribe to the channel. Just a click of a button. Also, if you are not able to watch it live, I don't know what else you're doing on a Monday night, but you should be watching live. But if you're not, make sure you check it out on iTunes and Spotify. It's normally available 24 hours after the show has gone live. And you can scan to buy NUFC Matters membership pack. So scan the code right there. And you can be entered into a prize draw, which is a monthly draw. To win some fantastic NUFC Matters and Cult membership gifts, as you can see on the screen. As well as that, subscribe to the show and receive a free car window sticker. Okay? Fantastic. I think me and Chris were talking about this last week, getting one of these bad boys for the car. And of course, on match days, you've got the Dog and Parrot for music, drinks, and pool. You always have the talking with Supermac. Holly, you're normally there on a match day with the crew, as well as Steve Rafe as well. NUFCfansfoodbank.co.uk. So if you're not able to be there to support the food bank on match days, you can use the virtual match day bucket. And this is where you're able to give your donations to Newcastle Food Bank, NUFC Fans Food Bank, should I say. So please support the NUFC Fans Food Bank. This is the website to contact. We have coming up very, very soon. Holly, I don't know if you want to talk about this because you're going to be part of this show.
Yeah, so on Saturday, the 9th of April at 12 o'clock, which is the day after the Wolves game, me, Steve, John Gibson and Malcolm MacDonald will be doing a talk-in at the Marlborough Social Club in Newcastle. And yeah, definitely get yourself along. Obviously, tickets are £10 from newcastlelegends.com. And it'll be good to see some people from the show. I'm sure it'll be a great evening as well.
Definitely get yourselves involved. Tickets £10. And of course, online now, the 260 dinner for the main man, the big man, Alan Shearer. Win 2 tickets. Enter now for £5 at nufcmatters.com. And again, another promotion. Celebrate the Premier League and Newcastle United's greatest ever goal scorer for one night only. The game on Friday, you can win 2 tickets to Newcastle versus Wolves. Simply like, retweet, and at 3 friends, then follow Steve Rafe on YouTube to be entered into the draw. We have Newcastle United Women's versus Barnsley Women. Sunday, the 1st of May, 2 p.m. kickoff. Make sure you go down and give Newcastle United Women their full support. And online now, Matt Target signed and framed Newcastle United shirt now, or enter now, should I say, for £3.95 football prizes. And of course, it'd be wrong for me not to promote Loaded HQ, and we've got an absolute banger of a show tomorrow night where we have the one and only Sky Sports Pete Graves joining us for the show to talk all things Newcastle United, to talk all things transfers, and looking into the future for the summer, as well as looking at their fantastic award as a sports podcast awards winner for this year. So lots to talk about with Pete Graves. Really looking forward to that show. Come and join Loaded to talk to Pete Graves. Give us a like and subscribe while you're there. And also, we are celebrating Loaded Mag's birthday. So it's Loaded Mag's birthday week this week. So lots of celebration going on, lots to talk about NUFC related, lots to reflect on over, what's been, an interesting first year for Loaded HQ and Loaded Mag in particular. Lots of changes, going from strength to strength. So come and join myself and the boys to talk all things Newcastle United and all things Loaded. If you're into the zebra, I think there's a promise there's a zebra. I'll just be being sick in the corner. But yeah, there'll be a zebra video played at some point. But yeah, come and get involved and join us boys for a chat. And that's that. Feel better now. That's out of the way. I tell you what, it's an absolute marathon getting through all those sponsors. Madness. But right, back to football, Holly. And I do have a number of questions to come up. But first, a surprise result or result at half time, I think it is. Palace 2, Arsenal 0. Patrick Vieira is really sort of doing the business at Crystal Palace this season. Certainly been away from relegation and playing some good stuff. So interesting result. We'll keep an eye on that in the second half. Thank you for that, Kamal. Big supporter of the show. Right. I'll ask this question to you, Holly. It's come from Steve. He said, will we be able to offload players? They know it's downwards. No other Premier League club will want them, in my opinion. What do you think on that with regards to Steve? Good question. Will we be able to offload any players?
It is a very good question, and I think there will be difficulties there with one or two who have a few years left on their contract or on quite high wages. That will be a problem because a lot of them won't want to drop their wages, and then if a championship club, for example, wants to sign them, they can't afford those prices, so we're stuck. And I really hope that doesn't happen, but it's going to happen with a few players. Of course it is, it always does. It's happened before, but a lot of the players, I think certainly the ones that have a bit of ambition coming towards the end of their career and want to kind of go out in a good fashion, will want to get that move, because if they know they're not going to get the game time at Newcastle, then they'll want to get that game time elsewhere. Because as an ambitious footballer, I think you've got to go somewhere where you are going to get games and be remembered. And of course, it's going to be a step down. But say, for example, they went to the Scottish Premier League. You can be a real club legend there. You look at like players in the past, like Paul Gascoigne. Everyone thought he was finished. He went to Rangers and he was one of their absolute heroes. He still is to this day. So I think if you've got ambition, we will see some players move on, even though it might not be another Premier League club. But we will be stuck with one or two, unfortunately.
Yeah, it'll be a process. Like we've both said that tonight. It's going to be a process. It'll be over the case of 2 or 3 transfer windows, summer, January, maybe next summer, the summer after, where we won't actually see all of those players currently playing for the club or part of the squad, out of the squad, that are actually moved on to other clubs. So it is going to be a process. But as you said, I think changing that first 11 and bringing out some of these players that started week in, week out, and having them as squad players, it is the first step. Interesting one from Emmett Griffin. Welcome, Emmett. James Ward-Prowse from the Saints, talking about potential signings in the summer. Would you take James Ward-Prowse in our midfield?
I think he's a player that's kind of been mentioned for a few seasons. I know a lot of people like him, and yeah, I probably would. I don't think he's a player that you'd look to probably try and challenge for the league or European spots with, but I think certainly for the next few years while we're trying to get that stability, because obviously since we came back up from the Championship, it's been kind of 5 seasons, but we've still flirted with relegation every season. So I think we need to know that we're going to finish in the mid-table, pushing into the first half, and I think a player like Ward-Prowse would be a really good player kind of in that little period in the club.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's not the type of all-action, high-pressing midfielder like the likes of Joe and the two Joes, should I say. But he does cover a lot of ground. His work rate is fantastic. I think his fitness, in terms of how much he runs in a game, is up there with some of the best in the league. I think he's in the top 2 or 3. So he can clearly cover ground, but he's a different type of player. Very good on the ball. And those set pieces are just unrivaled at the moment in the Premier League. Another fantastic goal at the weekend, free kick at Ellen Road against Leeds United. Another one here, talking about the captains. Steve said the modern day football concept of a captain is not what it used to be. Don't see players responding to be called out on the pitch. Yeah, I think that's a fair point. The captaincy isn't what it used to be in terms of the barking orders and responding to situations like that. Equally, Emmett has said Trippier for captain next season, as yourself and I mentioned earlier on, Holly, in the show, and Rachel agrees as well. Trippier is captain 100%. So there are some that definitely would like Trippier to be captain of the club next season. That is for sure. But going back to the questions, I've got from Lee Errington here. Welcome, Lee. Great to see you in the chat. Pete Holly, are the players suffering from the 9-game run hangover? And some of those yesterday are looking over their shoulder at what could come next season, and are they going to be at the club? Okay, interesting point there raised from Lee. What do you make of that comment there?
I'm not sure exactly how he's worded the question. I don't know if he means like, obviously they've had that good run of form, and then maybe some of the players that know the Pura like are worrying, will I not be good enough next season? Is that what he's kind of meaning? Do you think?
That's what I took from it. So I think he's asked the question of the players suffering from the 9-game run hangover. And now that's over, now we've lost those 3 games, and are some of the players yesterday, I'm assuming that he's saying from the performance yesterday, are they looking over their shoulder because they're worried about who could potentially come in and take their spot in the summer with players likely to be signed?
Look, of course, we know that there is quite a few players currently in the squad which simply aren't good enough and won't be a part of the plans for the future. Some which, can't even get a game, like Dwight Gale, which we mentioned. And I think those players will know that their future is certainly not guaranteed at the club. As a professional, you'd like to think that wouldn't change how they played and still put that effort in, because ultimately they are getting paid to do a job. They've still got a responsibility up until they're told anything different. And for me, I think as well, like, say if you're getting some game time, like a John Joe Shelby, even for example, you'd want to put in the best performance you can, because if you think you don't have a future at Newcastle, you want to prove to another club, well, I'm good enough to have a game, for you want to sell yourself, like, so another club will be interested. Otherwise, what, you're going to cut your career short, or you're going to end up, somewhere which doesn't really give you the best chance. It's not the best move for you as a player. But I think, unfortunately, there will be a few players in that side. I'm not going to obviously mention names. I think that do have a poor attitude and probably won't care, and they just think, oh, well, I haven't got a future, so I'm just not going to try. But you'd like to think that that's not the case with most of them. And I think consistently throughout the squad, it wasn't just the players that I think don't have a guaranteed future. Even some of the players that you think will be part of the plans played badly on that day. So I think it's just a collective mentality which is going to take time to get stamped out of the players, like we mentioned earlier.
Yeah, I agree. I think there may be 1 or 2 in the camp. I think Kieran Clark's probably one that knows his future's not at the club. Federico Fernandez, but Federico Fernandez, I think, is one of those players that he still really respects the club. I think Kieran Clark does to a certain extent, and the fact they've been allowed to go to Dubai as part of that training camp says a lot. I think if their attitudes were really bad, I don't think they'd have been asked to go on the plane. Personally, they've been asked to stay behind, so that's a positive. Nice comments from Steve Hasty. Great show, great guests. I agree. I don't know about you, Holly, but I agree. Great show, great guests. Thank you for your support as always. But there was an interesting one here that I want to get your thoughts on. Christopher Davis says, heard James Maddison's going to be let go by Leicester in the summer. He'd be a cracking signing for us. Now, look, he was mooted as being a potential Arsenal signing last summer. And it was a case of, it got to the point, certainly reading the papers in Leicester, that it was imminent that Arsenal were going to bid, and it was a case of Leicester were just waiting for that bid to come in. It never came in the end, so he never moved on. But James Maddison, would you take him at Newcastle?
If he was willing to make the move to Newcastle, then 100% I'd take him. I think he's a great player. Probably one of the better midfield players in the Premier League, because I think he's just very consistent, and he's someone that every week will put in a good performance. So yeah, of course I would take him. It's just whether I'd want to kind of leave Leicester to move to Newcastle, but it's a good project certainly. And obviously, if Leicester aren't too keen on keeping a hold of him long term, then yeah, I'd be delighted with him.
Yeah, the only thing. He technically a superb player. Again, really good set piece taker, good on the ball. The only thing I'll say is, and I think this is Leicester's problem at the moment, is that he is a very niche player at the moment, because he's in that old style ACM, as Alan says, ACM. But he is that ACM, that attacking midfield. He's not a striker. He's not really a winger, but he's not really a centre midfielder. He's kind of that guy that plays in that attacking midfield role. And it's whether we've got a tactical setup that's going to allow him to play at his best. Because if we're playing the way we're playing right now, maybe it would work with the three in midfield. If we change that slightly, it means he's out of position and he's not quite going to be playing at the level that maybe we would expect. Leicester chop and change their formation at times to a back three, then a back four, depending on players in system. And sometimes he's out the team for that reason. So it would all depend on what Eddie Howe's want going forward. But certainly he'd be a player. And I think if Leicester said to him that his future's elsewhere, I think he'd be a shoo-in. I think he'd want to come to Newcastle, providing that a team in Europe and Champions League are not calling for him. I think he'd want to come and play for us. There's no doubt about it. Alan said quite rightly, West Ham were nearly relegated, and next season they were into Europe, so it can happen. I think you're referring to last season, Alan. So the season before that, they only stayed up, I think, with a couple of games to go. All of a sudden, with the help of Jesse Lingard, they end up just missing out on Champions League football. So, it's the point that we made earlier. It can happen. It is possible to be in that position. James Moore, Jimmy, how you doing, Jimmy? Great to see you. Hope you're well. He's going for 3-1 Newcastle. I would take that right now. That is for sure. 100%. I would take that result. Chris is saying all over the Gunners there. Yeah, it looks like they're getting the 3 points at the moment, Palace, the way the game's going. He also says, table service repeat. Yes, my wife was looking after me whilst we're on the show, keeping the brandies going. So yeah, thank you very much for that. And well spotted, by the way, Chris, as always. Interesting one here. Botman in ASAP. Need two for me, centre halves. Need another midfielder, winger, and 2 strikers, maybe another left back. What do you think about that? You agree with that, or do you think we need more?
Well, I don't think we're going to get more than that in one window. I think the January window, again, there'll be another window where we strengthen, depending on how the first half of the season goes. But yeah, I do agree with all of that, especially the 2 strikers, and I think that should be the number one priority. The first people you bring into the club should be the strikers for me. Obviously, we signed Chris Wood. He has played his part. He's done well. He kind of holds the ball up and things like that, but he's not really a goal scorer, and we need people that can score goals. Even in the midfield as well, we need players that can get up the pitch a lot more and score goals, because you have got players that do that, like St. Maximin, but his end product isn't really there. So I think that's got to be the priority, because we're in a position now where Wilson's obviously injured. Gale, for some reason, is never getting any game time, and Wood can't really score. He's only got the 1 goal during his time at the club. So not what you want to see, as a football club with your striker situation. So definitely I agree with all that, but the strikers have to be the number one priority for me.
Yeah, definitely. We need some firepower. I think that was evident yesterday. We need some firepower to put the ball in the back of the net, that's for sure. Benny with an interesting one. Lengthy sponsorship repeat. Surely Holly should share the burden, equality, and all that. Well, yeah. Why not, Holly? What do you think?
Well, next time, because I'm sure I'll do the 5-minute rant again at some point. Next time, I'll host the show, so we'll take turns.
Yeah, okay. Benny, we're working on it. We're working on it. I'll see. We'll speak afterwards with Holly and see what she says. But yeah, thanks for noticing. I'm joking. Okay, interesting one here. I want to get your thoughts on this one, Holly. It says from Andrew, it says, do you think we should keep Kraft over Dummett as he is injured over 6 months of every season? Now, I think he's referring to Paul Dummett, injured. I don't think he's injured at the moment, but generally he does have at least one sort of bad injury per season. What are your thoughts on that, Kraft or Dummett?
I would probably say keep Kraft. I think he is a better player, certainly now. Recently, I think he's done very, very well. He probably pips Manquillo for me, which I never thought I'd say because I always thought Manquillo was like a class above Kraft, but he has really improved, I think. And I think Kraft's one of those players that's often like a scapegoat player. He'll make one mistake and everyone jumps on it. I think he's one of them players, and you get those in teams. So I think he gets a lot of criticism sometimes that he doesn't deserve. But for Dummett, look, I love Dummett. I think he's been a great servant to the club, someone that's been here forever, pretty much. I don't think he's ever actually not been at Newcastle. I think he's come like all the way in and not really had many loans or anything, or if any loans, I think. So
two
loans.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he's been here for so long, and I think he does well in centre back. That's my preferred position for Paul Dummett. But the only problem is if you get rid of Dummett, then you're kind of worrying about having the right amount of homegrown players in the squad. For me, I think that could be a problem. So, but yeah, out of those two, I think Kraft's a better player.
Yeah, that'll be interesting, actually. Interesting to see who will go out of Manquillo and Kraft. Obviously, Kraft has played more minutes recently, but Manquillo didn't necessarily have his best game, although it is away at Tottenham. He didn't have his best game. So I think, again, Friday's an interesting one. Does Kraft come back in? Does Manquillo continue to start? I think that will tell us a lot from the points that you've made, Holly, definitely. So keep an eye on that one. Keith Roll, not that you counted or anything, but sponsors 8 minutes and 13 seconds. Not that you count him, but that's managed to get through it quite well. Fair play to you for keeping an eye on that one. Another one here. Interesting what your thoughts about this. So it did the rounds today. Janola's photo with Amanda and Mirdad today. Does he have a future role at the club? What are your thoughts on that, Ollie?
I didn't read too much into that photo because I think Amanda and stuff has a lot of time for many ex-players. A lot get invited to the games, in the director's box, and which we've seen. We've seen Malcolm MacDonald, we've seen Rob Lee, Keith Gillespie, many players from that kind of era, especially. But Ginola, I think he's got a chance of having a role. Certainly, he is one of the kind of cult heroes at the club. He does a lot of TV work and he'd probably have to sacrifice that. So I suppose that's a decision that he'd have to make. But as an ambassador or something, I think Ginola could be a good fit.
Yeah, definitely. If he's as committed to Newcastle as he was certainly as a player, then I don't see an issue with that at all. Question for Benny. He's come back again. He's put, Pete and Holly, assuming that we do stay up. Assuming? Come on, man. You're messing. We're staying up. How much do you think we will spend in the summer?
150 million, I think.
150? Interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting. So we've got some contrasting opinions here because we've got Dan that's got 70 million and then we've got John Justice Allen, 250. We're going big. John Justice Allen is not messing around. Absolute legend. But yeah, interesting. Yeah, I think me and Chris had the conversation about this a week or two ago, and I think if you look at what we get for staying in the Premier League, it's around about 120 million. Normally, 90% of that gets banked by Mike Ashley. That's not the case this time. I think probably 90% will be inputted into the team at least. So, I think, over 100 million is going to be invested of that money if we stay in when we stay in the Premier League. But as well as that, and I think maybe this is where your 150 is coming into that, is that, we've got player sales on top of that. If the likes of Almiron, Jacob Murphy, one or two others leave, Dwight Gale, if they eventually leave the club, that might give us a little bit more money and room to play around with. And that's not even involving then the investment of the consortium, that they might want to invest as well in that. So, it could well be 150, it could well be 250, like John Justice Allen said. But one thing's for sure is, just like January, I think all Newcastle United fans will love every minute of it, because we have been starved of anything like this for a long time, in terms of heavy investment into the club. Right, a few more questions before we wrap up. Interesting one here. I'm not sure if how much you know about this young man, but Lee Errington said, when we were talking about the Ericsson situation earlier, he put no to Ericsson, would rather go for Lucas Paqueta. Jan also says, yes, Paqueta is a top man. And Ashley then responds with, guys, just wait until Lucas Paqueta arrives in the summer. So he's already talking like he's already signed, like it's a done deal. New keeper, centre-back midfielder, another quality striker. Can't wait, will be amazing. Lucas Paqueta, I know a little bit about Lucas Paqueta as a player. Watched him play numerous times. Do you know much about him, other than that he's best mates with Bruno?
Yeah, I have seen a bit of him play, and like gut instinct, I would probably say I'd rather have him than Ericsson, just going off the first comment. And obviously with that little relationship with Bruno, I think, again, if you want to start to build a new core of a team and get rid of the old core, then I think obviously bringing in someone that works well with Bruno, who I believe will be a key player, makes a lot of sense. So I think that would be a very, very wise move for the club. I think it would be a brilliant fit. And as well, just what Ashley said, I completely forgot about that earlier when we were talking about who we bring in the summer as well. We definitely do need a goalkeeper. I think Martin Dubravka deserves to keep that number one spot, but he needs competition, because he's guaranteed that number one spot. Darlow, Gillespie, Woodman, I think all three of those aren't even in the same kind of league as Martin Dubravka. So we need someone to challenge him. But then also, if he gets injured, there needs to be someone just as good, if not better, to come in and replace him, because, like I said, the other three just aren't good enough for me.
Personally, it wouldn't surprise me if Darlow, Woodman and Gillespie all go in the summer. It wouldn't surprise me if Langley gets promoted to the first team as a third choice goalkeeper, playing under 23s now and again, and is coming in and buying actually a goalkeeper that could potentially take Dubravka out the team. Not that I don't like Dubravka, like yourself. I really do like Dubravka. I think he's done wonders for the club and kept us in games when he had no right to over the years. But again, it goes back to the point where we want to go. I think we need to sign a top quality goalkeeper. So I've become more and more convinced that that's going to be the case for me personally. Right. Last couple of questions. Let's see if there's. Right, let's have a look. Interesting one here. Do you think Bruno is a player Eddie wanted? When Shelby played well, Bruno couldn't get in, but when the reverse happened, Bruno gets dropped. What are your thoughts on that? Interesting question from Dino there.
I definitely think that Eddie Howe did want Bruno. I think he had a massive input in who was signed in that January window. Obviously, he would have had support from other people like Tyndall and Mirdad, who was doing, the signings as well. But I think he would have wanted him. Ultimately, it's his decision, because I think, unlike the previous regime, these owners realise that actually it's the manager's choice, because it's him who picks the team, whereas previously maybe Steve Bruce didn't have as much of a say in who was signed. But I think the reason why Bruno probably hasn't been starting games constantly is because we've signed him from, a totally different league, very different kind of physicality that's required. And I think you could tell he started that Chelsea game. And although I think he did well, by around the 60-minute mark, I think he looked absolutely knackered. And I think it's just a lot for him. And it does take that time to adjust. And it'll be worth it in the end, but you can't just rush him in because, quite frankly, he's not ready. He's not at that stage yet. It's too much. So I think he's just trying to ease him in, get that kind of blend right. And Shelvey, although yes, he has had one or two poor games in recent times, I think since Howe has come in, I think he's been very, very good. So he deserves to be playing game time. Yes, the Tottenham example might not be, the greatest time to see it after that game, but I think he will come good again. If he gets that chance on Wolves, I think he will respond. And I think that's the key thing when Shelvey hasn't played well. And we've seen him in interviews, he's owned up to that. He said, actually, I wasn't good enough, I apologise. And he's upped his performance in the next game, which is a good attitude for a player. For me, I've always saw Bruno, even from the moment he signed, as someone who would take this time to kind of ease into the squad, and then next season he'll play a massive part, and I still think that'll be the case.
Yeah, definitely. We talked about that earlier on in the evening. Great points as always. Randy, fantastic. Glad to see you part of the show. Come and join us again moving forward. Emmett as well. Can't normally watch live on a Monday, but we're watching from now on. Excellent. Great to have you on. Great questions as always. Keep them up. Dan, massive supporter. Great show as always. Benny agrees with you, should I say. All three goalkeepers are not Premier League standard. Political bias, saying good night to Rachel. Interesting from here, guys. Do you think KK will be offered a role at St James's? Do you think that'll get done? Interesting one.
Before I say what I'm going to say, I just want to highlight that I do love Kevin Keegan. He's a legend and he always will be a legend. But in this current situation, under these owners, I wouldn't have Kevin Keegan back at the club in a role. Not because I don't think he'd sell the club well, because I think he'd be brilliant at that. And we saw him attracting players. It was kind of like a similar situation in some sense, that we obviously got promoted from the second division to the first division, and he totally kind of built that from scratch, and he was attracting big name players that otherwise probably wouldn't have came into the club. So yeah, of course, I think he'd represent Newcastle well, sell the club well. But the only issue I have with Keegan is, I think his attitude that he's shown in more than one situations is that when he doesn't like something or something upsets him, he will kind of just down tools and walk away. And not only that, he'll kind of be very vocal about it, which he's more than entitled to do. And in the past couple of times, he's been very correct. 100% he's been correct. But see if something went wrong when he was at the club, and then he went off and kind of had a rant to whoever in the media, then I think a lot of fans, because of how much of a cult hero Kevin Keegan is, would listen to that, and that could cloud the views of the owners and cause a lot of problems. So just because of the unrest that could potentially happen, I just wouldn't go down that route, and I just think he should be left in the way he was, remembered as a legend. And I don't want another situation like the second time he came in as manager, and no one holds that against him. But it was disappointing because he did so well the first time, didn't really get that chance the second time, and things didn't go as well. And I just don't want something like that to happen again.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. I always looked at the situation in that once the takeover had happened, it was a quick win, an easy win, in order to bring Kevin Keegan back in some capacity, not in a role, but just bring him back to St James's and get him
definitely
in the stadium to raise the atmosphere. And that never happened. And that was always an interesting thing for me. And I look back and thought, okay, well, why did that not happen? And so that really kind of crossed off my opinions that he was going to be given a role in the club. I think it's an ambassador role. It's not a director of football. It's not a manager's role. It's a role that can be given quite easily, and you represent the club in various different positions when you go travelling around Europe or around England, wherever it is. So the fact that that never happened says to me quite early on that it was never going to happen, and I don't expect it to. But I think at some point he should be welcomed back to the club. Whether it's the game at home to Liverpool at the back end of the season, that would be the perfect opportunity, being ex-Liverpool and ex-Newcastle. I think he should be given that opportunity to come back to the club, like many other players as well, and be paraded onto the pitch like they deserve to be. That's just my opinion on that. And look, the last one for me, Actually, just before that, CBK. Happy birthday to Ben. Hope Ben has a great day. Hope he's had a great day and enjoys. And the last one from me really is it asks the question. It says, "Do we think we should keep St. Maxi in the summer?" Personally, find it very frustrating to watch as late. I know you've had your opinion on this, and you've been adamant that if we get the bid, Holly, that maybe we should sell him. Lee Ellington also adds on there, if ASM's that good, why hasn't Man City, Liverpool, PSG come in for him? If he's that good, is ASM at the level he is at and shines in a poor team? It's a great question and a great great opinions on that. From my point of view, I just think ASM ultimately, this has been the best team playing Premier League football that ASM's been in. So he hasn't had the opportunity to play at the top level. I think teams have been watching him develop. He's got great raw talents and ability, but it's about whether he can develop the other side of his game. Can he be a player that plays the right final ball? Is he a player that can get more goals in a season? If you look at his previous 2 seasons to this season, he is making that progress. It may not be as quick as what we want, but he is making progress every season. And I think he will get better every season. And I think a full pre-season under Eddie Howe, a full season with better players at Newcastle United, I think you will know by the end of next season whether Alan St-Maximin is the type of player that's ready to step up for Newcastle United or a player that needs to be moved on. If by the end of next season he's putting out the same type of performances he is right now for Newcastle United, I think Newcastle will sell. Okay, well, I think with 2-3 years left on his contract, I think they'll sell up. Would you agree with that, Holly?
Yeah, I would agree. And St-Maximin, I think the thing that because I agree with what you said, his raw talent is unbelievable. It's just about whether he can become that finished product. And I think the thing with him that's kind of frustrated me recently is, obviously he came out, kind of made a public thing of saying a lot of people's criticising us. I'm going to prove why that's rubbish and why I deserve to be in this team, why I'm going to be good enough. And he never did it. It's a lot of talk and no actual action on that. He came back into the team, obviously, after making that little statement and did absolutely nothing. And in that Chelsea game, I thought he was particularly poor. Obviously came on off the bench, we didn't have the full game, but I really, really think in part he did cost us the game. And it's because, and this is something we've seen consistently across the 3 years, he's very selfish. He's not a team player. There's many times he should pass the ball, get other players involved, and he'd rather just take the shot for himself. And 9 times out of 10, he never puts the shot away. So people are going to get annoyed. If he scores, it's a different matter. But, most of the time he doesn't. And for me, it's just not enough. I think if he does step up and he actually acts on what he's been saying between now and the end of the season, then opinion can change. But right now, I just think, he's saying a lot and not acting on that. And as well, I think he said, does he shine bright because he's in a poor team? Well, you look at kind of the 2 seasons under Steve Bruce, and everyone would agree he was the best player by a long shot. Everyone loved him, idolised him, praised him. Couldn't speak highly enough of him because he was the only one that was doing anything. The players were very nervous. Anytime we got the ball and there was a time to go on the attack, they just put it to St-Maximin and hope he did something. And, but now things have changed. Eddie Howe's came in. We've got a few more talented players on the side and we've seen him not look as good. So you could argue that is a valid point because obviously he's had that bit of competition now. And let's be honest, he doesn't even look average. He looks poor at times. And funnily enough, in the Spurs game, he got a lot of criticism, especially on social media. But I didn't think he had that bad of a game compared to some of his recent games.
I agree. I thought he had a good first half. Like I said, and you've alluded to it as well. He caused a lot of problems down that left-hand side. A lot of our play came down that left-hand side. They had 3 men on him. It's very, very difficult. A lot of teams, we have to remember, a lot of teams are organising their tactics in order to stop Alan St-Maximin playing. So he has to be prepared for 3 men to be on him, and he's got to ultimately create and be something different. Now, for a young lad, he's still a young lad, 24, 25 years old, to have that type of pressure on him game in, game out, it is difficult. But if you add another right winger, another right quality winger, Ryan Fraser's a good player, but if you add someone else on the other wing that's going to command just as much attention on there, and you buy a striker that's going to be deadly, that defenders are going to need to be aware of, that's then 3 players that teams have got to be aware of. And that takes the emphasis off Anas Maximin, which means he might have more time and space to provide his brilliance that he's capable of. But he needs those other quality players around him. When Callum Wilson plays, teams play to stop Wilson because they know he's a goal threat. So it allows Anas Maximin to play his stuff. You add Bruno Guimaraes, you add the potential of another midfielder. We've talked about Lucas Paqueta tonight, who's a goal scorer from an attacking midfielder point of view. He's a very, very talented player. You add him to the mix, you've got 4 or 5 players there that teams have got to look out for. And that then allows all of those individuals to have moments in the game where they can show their brilliance. As one player at the moment that basically the team is kind of holding their hopes on, he's never ever always going to hit the heights as maybe we want to. In games he will, in other games he won't, and that's where the hit and miss comes from. But guys, from my perspective, stay patient with him, keep supporting him more than anything. We need to keep his confidence high, because when his confidence is high and he knows he's got the backing of the fans at game time, he's going to produce and he's going to work his hardest to do the business for Newcastle United. But that's obviously just our opinion on that. But we'll leave that there for tonight. Fantastic questions from the chat. Fantastic guests, as always, coming in, sharing their opinions. And of course, massive thanks to you, Holly, for coming in and taking the time to talk all things Newcastle with us on the Fans Forum. And I'm sure we'll have you back very soon to talk more again in the future.
Thanks for having us on, Pete.
No problem at all. Right. Fingers crossed for 3 points on Friday. Praying for it. We need it. We need a performance. I'm sure we'll get it. And we'll be talking more positively next Monday. But until then, you guys take care. We'll speak to you soon. Good night.